So this is not just going to be, oops, there we go. This is not going to be a lecture and slides and the whole bit. I want this to be a conversation, because forgiveness is exactly that. It's a conversation. It's an ongoing dialogue that we have with others and that we have with ourselves. So at this point, I want you to have ownership in this, have this as just a very comfortable dialogue here. You're in safe space. Whatever happens here, as they say, stays here. But I would just like us to have an opportunity to have a discussion about forgiveness and what that means. So have any of you ever had a resentment? I know I have. You raise your hand if you had. Is that a resentment about anything? Have any of you ever had a resentment? Yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah. and may still have one right now. And have any of you experienced a situation where you just felt that things were just unjust? It just wasn't right for you. It's like, yes, right. So, and feel free to either jump in or just unmute if you like. I'm going to ask the next question. What comes to mind when you hear the word forgiveness? People have such a different response to this. What comes to mind when you hear the word forgiveness? And you can use the chat, or if you like to just jump out and just talk about it. What comes to your mind when that word? Do you have a visceral response to it? Do you have do you feel it in your body? Do you have anger? Do you have how do you feel? What does the word forgiveness bring up for you?
Forgiveness allows for healing for me, but it doesn't excuse the behavior that was done towards you. But it does allow you to get to start a process for me of healing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Starting new, good feelings, letting go of anger. Anyone else? Just jump right in. Just unmute yourself and just, if you'd like to just say.
It makes me feel a little bit angry because I feel like a lot of people use it not to be accountable, but to just make something bad go away.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like letting themselves off the hook, right? Not taking that accountability. Is that right? Anyone else? Is there someone monitoring the chat for me that's going to read the chats? I'm not sure. Anisha, are you monitoring the chat and at this point?
Yes, it's going to be me in May.
Okay, then if you see, in May. Okay, so you guys are monitoring the chat. So if you see something in the chat that I may miss that, just go ahead and say what's coming up for me, please, in the chat. Okay. Oftentimes people have all kinds of visceral, different responses to just the word, just the concept, and sometimes it has to do with the definition and the meaning that they give the word, and what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to tell you about my forgiveness journey. And what I want to share with you is that it's possible. I want you to know, if nothing else, it's possible. And my journey starts many, many years ago when I've always been amazed at how there could be the most heinous kinds of situations occur, and people have been able to turn those around and create foundations and to make connections in ways that just didn't seem logical based on the situation. That's always been fascinating to me. And for as far back as I can remember, they had, we had Columbine, and out of Columbine came, Rachel's Foundation, and different kinds of things occurred as a result of that. But then for me, on my journey, about almost 25, I'm going to say 25 incidences later, because between Columbine and 2006, there were 25 additional instances that happened that were at that level. In 2006, for those of you that may remember, it was the Amish community in Nichols Mine, Pennsylvania. And I don't know if, so as I said, some of you may remember this and some of you may not be aware of this, but the Amish group had a one-room schoolhouse. And in that schoolhouse, there were, boys and girls and attending on this particular morning in 2006. And what they call an outsider. So there was an outsider who was also, that was connected to the Amish community. And he was a delivery person, I believe, at the time. So he was familiar with the Amish group, but he wasn't considered part of their community necessarily. That particular morning, he decided to go to the schoolhouse. He released the boys. He tied up the 10 girls that were there, and he shot them all. Five died and 5 survived. And then he turned the gun on himself. Okay. Shortly thereafter, when the news hits with that, just, what do we say? With that insane situation, we hear that the Amish community now shows up at the door of the perpetrator's family. So they're at the door as a community. They're at the person that committed this crime, they're at their door. The person that committed the crime has children, has a wife. He left home that morning, like a regular morning, and went off to work. And that's how it ended up for them. Later, we would find out that he was angry because he had lost a child. He had lost a little girl, and I guess, I'm not sure in childbirth, but anyhow, he had lost a daughter. And so this was his anger. But what happens next would change the course of the entire concept of forgiveness, because they were there to offer support and forgiveness to that family before they were even aware of the full extent of their children, some of those children that were still in the hospital. Well, that right there was a turning point for me, because that started my journey into how is it that you could take something like that, and as time goes on, maybe you could kind of do that, but how is it that people could do that so quickly? And then, so, excuse me. So my journey now continues, because now I'm a student of forgiveness. I mean, this is just amazing. The human nature, and what I knew at that point, without really even knowing, I think, was that I wanted to be a part of the how. I wanted to understand. I wanted to know. I wanted to take a look at and be instrumental in helping people with that how. It led me to years later, in 2011, I believe it was. I'm now at Pepperdine working on my master's in dispute resolution, and I'm sitting in a class called Forgiveness, Apology, and Reconciliation. So powerful. And in that class, of course, we looked at all aspects of forgiveness, but of course, we took a look at the Holocaust and the impact of the Holocaust, and people that came out of that Holocaust and went on to do amazing things as well. And it gave me a flashback to an employee that I once had prior to that, who one day in our conversation rolled up her sleeves and showed me her numbers. Right. Moving forward now, while I'm at Pepperdine, I have this opportunity to attend this workshop. The workshop was put on by a South African priest who had done a lot of work for apartheid. He taught in Black colleges and white colleges, and he was very instrumental. He was very active in the whole that whole movement that was going on. 3 months after Mandela comes out of jail, Father Lapsley, Michael Lapsley, somehow I got muted there, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's the last thing you heard.
I think you said Father Lapsley or something like that.
Okay, that's great. Father Lapsley went to his mailbox and took out 2 religious magazines that ended up being a letter bomb. They blew off both his hands, they ruptured his eardrum, and he lost his eye. I'm sitting in this workshop with Father Lapsley, who now at this point uses the metal hooks for hands. He doesn't have the prosthetic hands. He's using metal hooks for both of his hands. And he's teaching healing of memories. At that point, I'm without a doubt, well, here's what I can say. It's possible. It's possible. And even though I think that oftentimes we know it's possible, we would like to do it, but we get stuck. We get stuck because in a particular situation, it's like, how do I get past this space right here? How do I make this happen? I may understand that, I may want that, but in this scenario, I'm not so sure. No, but it's possible. So I'd like you to just take a few moments and think about it. Think about this for a moment. Can you think of a time when you've had an experience that you needed to be forgiven or you needed to forgive? Just take a moment and think of a time when you needed to be forgiven or to forgive. And in that moment, I'd like you to think about how did that feel? How did that feel? And what did you need in that moment? Again, anyone like to comment? Sharif?
Yeah, the first thing for me that comes to mind is as a parent, you often have to learn to forgive and to ask for forgiveness when it comes to your children, because at the end of the day, you're always going to be a part of their life, or so you hope. And there does come a time, when they're grown, where you can't make them do anything, and 100% of your relationship is based on, that trust and that love that you have between each other. And so you always know that, you never want them to leave the house, with any kind of anger or anything like that in their heart, and you never want to see them leave the house with anger for them. And so, there's always that consistent need to want to be forgiven and to forgive in that relationship between parent and child.
Absolutely, thank you. That's very true. You don't, you always, sometimes you think about, you don't want that to be what they remember, how they think of you, and you want to empower them as they leave the house. Excuse me.
I think for me, sometimes when I'm looking at forgiveness, like I think what I need is just for the other person to really know that I'm genuine. I think sometimes people, don't necessarily think you're coming from a good place. And I think when I'm in the mode of either needing forgiveness or giving forgiveness, I just, I think that the exchange is authentic and then it's realized as authentic.
Absolutely, that's critically important, because at the end of the day, if it's not authentic, it's almost like re-injuring, so to speak. It's almost like taking back through that same scenario. But that's a good point. Being authentic is critically important in the forgiveness process, and authentic for not only for them but for yourself as well. Nicole?
Oh yes, actually, I wanted to just follow up on that, and you just said it. Not only authentic for yourself, but them as well. Sometimes I know that I'm authentic and not to be hurt again and again in that same conflict, to be re-injured. I often have times lowering that bar to accept, are they authentic? Because sometimes if people are as authentic as I believe that I am, that's often difficult to believe. But there are people out there like that, and it's hard to accept, which also makes it clearer for me when I'm asking for forgiveness, that I have to understand, I want them, as Tina said, they know that I'm authentic as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And that is true. Sometimes it is hard to accept, but it's a little bit about ourselves as well too. When you struggle to have that, it's like, okay, is that real? Is that, can I really, is that possible? Because it kind of taps into, do I deserve that? You're tapping into whether or not you're feeling about what you deserve or what in this process. Is there anyone else? So now, what is your belief? Now, here's what I'd like you to look at. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about, so forgiveness as it relates to, we're going to get into as it relates to the juvenile justice system. Now, but what is your belief? Do you believe that it's possible? Do you believe that every situation can be forgiven? What do you think? Or do you think that it's just, I'm not so sure about that? Or what do you think?
I think it's a case-by-case basis. I feel like it depends on where the individual is currently are in their life and what they're willing to, because some people, they may not have arrived there or they just don't want to. And that's okay. So I don't think that forgiveness should be forced. Forgiveness should be voluntarily. If a person wants to forgive someone else, that's their right. If they choose not to, that's their right. So I just think we have to meet people where they are.
That's absolutely correct. It should never be forced. It can never be really be forced, because then that's not going to be sustainable. That's not going to be, well, as you're saying, authentic, and that's just not going to. It's not going to. It's not going to get you to that healing that is so necessary down the road. What do you think it's possible in the criminal? And do you think that when you sit down and it's some of the work that you do, as you say, the people have to be ready and they have to be available and they have to want to. That's definitely true. But do you think that if you sit down with a situation, do you think there's a situation you'll sit down with and go, this isn't possible? Forgiveness is not possible? Or do you think that it's possible, but you have to just work through it? What do you think about that?
I think it's possible. Go ahead. It went. Sorry about that.
No, my apologies. I didn't mean to step on you, Rachel. Go ahead.
No, I'm fine. I want to hear what you say. Thank you.
I do think that there are times, even as someone in this space in NCRP, that you don't think that forgiveness is available even when you sit down. And even in that moment, Rachel, as you said, meeting someone where they are. But I still think that forgiveness is still there, available, and an opportunity. You just have to be able to be open to it. And sometimes sitting down, you're not in that space to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Rachel?
Oh, no. I don't know if it's another Rachel in here, but I just said I feel like it's a possibility. I don't want to never say never, because I've seen so many things in my life when I thought something was like completely impossible, I always see the impossible happen. So I really don't.
I'm sorry, Melinda also has her hand raised.
Oh, Melinda, please. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you for acknowledging me. I would just say sometimes in forgiveness, there's a level of accountability that we're expecting, especially when we hope that a person is expressing remorse for the things that they've done to harm people. And I understand that sometimes an individual may never receive that person stating that they are taking accountability for something, and forgiveness is generally seen as something that a person should do for themselves, for the benefit of themselves. However, I think rooted in that, sometimes, oftentimes people are expecting to at least hear that person be accountable and say that, I took these actions, even regardless of the reason, but just stating that I do accept the fact that I caused this harm, and that helps the person in forgiveness.
Thank you. That's great. Nicole again? Raise your hand, Philip. Nicole.
If my hand is up, it should not be.
So, well, thank you.
All
That just
right.
means you're in this constant state of thoughts. Yeah, I'm appreciating.
Oh, I definitely.
So now, as it relates to the juvenile justice system, how do you see the role of forgiveness in that particular system? What are your thoughts about that?
Hi, Marquita. This is Renata.
Hello, Renata.
Hello, my friend. In response to your question, I see it in a couple of different ways. One, when you have an opportunity to create a victim offender mediation component, forgiveness is a huge piece for the victim trying to find the forgiveness of the offender, but yet holding that offender accountable. I think for the victim to find that forgiveness allows them to move forward and not be imprisoned by whatever that it was. For the offender, I think forgiveness is necessary in much the same way as it is with the victim. It allows the accountability, but also it frees them to move forward. I made a mistake. I'm accepting responsibility for that whatever it is, and it allows them to move forward. There's a big piece of the healing that we don't see when it comes to youth, or even in our adult system to some degree. So that forgiveness piece, whether it's an apology, whether it's a written statement of acknowledging the wrong, the hurt, the harm, I think is crucial, because we do not live on an island by ourselves. We are a community. We are connected, whether we want to be, whether we want to acknowledge it. We are one. And so if I step outside my front door and I can't forgive this person that brought me harm, the only person I'm imprisoning is myself. I'm not healing. I'm still dealing with hurts, and I'm not moving forward. I'm stuck. The same applies to the offender.
Mhm.
If I can't hold myself accountable, if I can't say what I did was wrong, and I can't forgive myself,
Mhm.
then that person is also stagnant. So I think it has a huge role when you think about victim offender mediation. And I think peer courts are probably the best place for that to take place.
Yes,
So
thank you.
that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Anita. I appreciate that. You actually kind of just are segueing right exactly where I'm headed next. Tina?
I was just going to say, just to kind of add to what Renata was saying, I think the societal forgiveness is so important too. I think that sets a precedent or a pathway for the individual to also be able to forgive a bit, knowing that sometimes we don't have to get a punitive settlement. We can get a spiritual or a just a well-being kind of settlement to an issue. And that if that doesn't become okay in society, we may have some struggles with the individual really accepting forgiveness as a path to both parties coming to healing.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so very much, Tina. Absolutely. And that's definitely where I'm headed in this concept at this point, because as I'm listening to this opportunity and you're redesigning the juvenile justice system, it is just, to me, it's just critically important that we have a forgiveness component, or actually an entire program, because I think having a program allows people to go through a process, because forgiveness, the journey of forgiveness is a process. It is not just a one-shot deal. We're not going to just say, I'm sorry, and it's over. It's not over. Actually, it starts with the I'm sorry. When you start at that point, that is just the beginning of your journey. And you may have to constantly revisit that for yourself, because if you think at some point, you have forgiven or you have been forgiven, then things come up and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot about this part, And so it's a constant journey. And ultimately what you want is for it to become a lifestyle. When I work with some clients, it's interesting that we are, I'm going to say the range, like, you have 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and into the 80s. And we're looking at the impact of the things that have happened to them way back when they were youth. Impact the things that happened when they were in their homes, or when just situations that they never were able to either address, resolve, discuss, acknowledge, or even be aware of. And so having a juvenile justice forgiveness program, I think, is really going to put the youth way ahead. So they won't have to wait to see me when they're 30 or 40 down the road. But, it will give them an opportunity, first of all, to be heard. Second of all, it will give them an opportunity to learn how to navigate through life. Because what happens now, when you have a tools to learn how to forgive, or to be able to move forward, or to be able to discern, when things occur, you deal with them in the moment. You deal with them in the moment, and you pause, and you ask yourself, what else could this mean? You pause and you react, you respond as opposed to reacting. And it might not even be anything that is worth, you carrying around. But I tell you, later on, when I'm watching how people are unpacking so many hurts from the past, it's been phenomenal. And my thing is, like, when we start doing inner child work, I'm thinking, well, they're already kids. Let's start with them now. We don't have to wait till they get there. Let's start with them now. But I'd love to see some kind of some kind of a forgiveness, a juvenile justice forgiveness program. And actually, I started outlining one, because that's been in my mind as well. And it also helps them to identify and respond to their triggers. Triggers are huge. Triggers are huge. Triggers are meant to people react as opposed to respond. But what I love about triggers, I personally love not the triggers that send people over the edge, but personal triggers, the one in your spirit, the one in your heart, the ones in your soul. It's an opportunity. Triggers are actually information. It's an opportunity. It's like, oh, and it's a moment for us to learn about ourselves. I've had these moments when I am feeling, as they say, some type of way, and I'm thinking, where did that come from? You've had those moments where you're thinking, I didn't think this situation was impacting me or affecting me, and you take a moment and you unravel that for a second, and you realize, oh, this is coming from this scenario, my ex-husband, my parents, this happened at home, this is what came, coming up for me. And now you can address it, because I'm telling you something, once you can address what you're feeling, what your trigger is, then you can handle it. And actually, once you call it out, it goes away. It's like, oh, this is so-and-so. Okay, I'm good. Now I can move on. So when you have a forgiveness program, or when you have an opportunity for to have a process that people go through, or that kids can go through, they can take these tools and use them throughout their entire lives. And kids are really great at being able to kind of synthesize, some of the information, because a lot of the conversations that we have about the issues that we're dealing with is the stories we tell ourselves. Our first core wounding comes from unmet expectations. We've had some kind of expectation, something happened, something triggered, and we had this unmet this expectation in our mind that this person or the circumstance did not live up to. And it's particularly interesting when we have if it's with somebody who has a label that we think should behave in a certain way. Mother, if you have a label for your mom, you have all these unwritten expectations, whether she knows it or not. Can you believe? And what do we say? That was my mother, or I can't believe that was so-and-so. You know, that was my sister, that was my friend, whatever that label is, we have all these expectations of them. And our wounding comes in the fact that they did not live up to that space, you know. But when you're able to go through some kind of the forgiveness program, you can kind of take a look at that. And what you get to recognize is that, you know, a label does not provide that person with the capacity or the ability to do what you need them to do. A label, motherhood doesn't come with a book, you know, a label does not provide them with that. And, you know, and actually, to tell you the truth, they may or may not, just because they have that label, does not mean that they have the capacity to be able to, oh, thank you. Rachel, just 1 second here. Thank you. Just because you have that label does not mean you have the capacity to be able to do that. You may have a gallon-sized need. They may have a pint-sized capacity. And what they're doing is they're giving you 100% of that capacity. They're giving you 100 of what they have. But in your frustration and in your desire for them to respond and react and to do what you need them to do, you're coming at them like this, and they're saying, but I'm giving you, and you're saying, no, I need more. And they're saying, no, I'm giving you 100% of what I have. Now, if you would have flipped that around for just a moment and you say, oh my goodness, we're there, almost there. And so I'll finish this point really quickly. If someone comes to you, and I'll just show you quickly how you turn that concept around. If you have a need for 2 loaves of bread, stores are closed, and you have 2 loaves, you need two loaves of bread. And you go to a friend's house and you say, I need 2 loaves. They say, I have 1. You say, but I need 2. And they give you that 1, all they have, you know. And you're still in this space that says, but I need it. But then you take a step back and go, when you realize that they gave you 100% of what they have, now your relationship with them, your filter about them now changes, because all they had was what they gave you. And now you can take a look at that and go, wow, when I had a need, they gave me the last of what they had. Rachel.
No, I just want to hold my thought for another time because you're expanding on it and I appreciate it. Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm good. Go ahead.
No, I was sharing that with my son. I have a teenage son. He's 17 years old. And I didn't want him to grow up like I grew up with failed expectations from my father. So I told him, and I tell him all the time, I just told him 2 days ago, that just because my dad is a good person, it doesn't mean that he's a good father. Yes, he's a good person, but he's just not a good father. And it's not, I think the expectation that I had is similar to most common people's expectation of their parents, meaning you want them to fulfill the unmet need that you have. So I'm saying this as a healing, which it took me forever to do, that I just gotta, even with my father, meet him where he was. And that's what helped me to start forgiving and moving on, because I just was holding it was just holding forever and ever. But that's all I wanted to share from childhood. It happened from childhood to adulthood.
Absolutely. And that's, I'm sorry. And that's usually where it starts. I can't believe our time is almost there, because I'm just warming up. We could talk about forgiveness forever, you know. But I would just like to kind of bring it to a space right now, because I'm thinking, okay, we are so close to the end here. I think what I want to just leave you with just very quickly here is that when you find yourself in a situation that you struggle to forgive, you know, to give yourself the gift of your complete self. Give yourself you. Give yourself back to you at that point. Because as we know, as it's been alluded to here, forgiveness is not for the other person. The forgiveness does not exonerate them. It does not. So some people kind of feel as though they don't want to let go of what they're holding on to, because especially if it's a situation, let's say if they took the life of a loved one from you, and you may feel as though by forgiving them, you're letting them down, or by you're not holding their heart and their spirit the way that you should. But forgiveness frees you. What you're not doing is you're not continually being entangled with them. You're no longer hooked, eternally, perpetually, you have released your spirit. You're taking back control of yourself. So at the end of the day, forgiveness is about you. And when you talk about really, when everything really tends to kind of come back around, it's all about self-forgiveness. Give yourself a break, give yourself grace, because as they say, when you know better, you're dead better. The choices that you made when you made that choice was based on the circumstances at that time. If you would encounter that same situation again, you more than likely, because of what you know now, you will not do the same thing. So give yourself an opportunity, give yourself a break, and embrace the growth. Embrace your growth. And it's also, we get wrapped up in the stories that we tell ourselves. We get wrapped up in who we are. And at some point, forgiveness allows you to get out of that story and to stand on your story and let it carry you and support you and elevate you to the next level. So if you're able to just forget, and if the kids are able to, I have until 1:35. Thank you. And if the kids are able to, in the juvenile justice system, imagine what that would do for them. Imagine if they are able to step back out of their circumstances, and they come from some very difficult circumstances. But if we could create systems or supports around the fact that they can learn how to be resourceful for themselves. They can learn to reach out to somebody. The reason why there's so many adults here is because the adults really care. And we need to convey that to them, let them know that we are there for them. Because as was said this morning, it just takes one person to turn that child around, or to be there for that child. They come out of situations that they cannot understand, they cannot navigate, they can't fathom. But one person can make a difference. And if we create a system to allow them, when they come, if they end up having to be in the juvenile justice system, there's something there for them to get the tools so they can learn how to move forward in their life. Then we've done more than, we've done more than, I guess I wouldn't say our work here is done, so to speak, but it's not. But it's helped them to kind of move on with their life. So where are we on time? I'm just checking here. Oh, great. So I'm sorry, am I getting another 20 minutes? Is that what it's saying?
So what we've done, because your other presenter has chosen to do a Q&A within his session. So we want to give you that same opportunity, but also recognize that if folks need to take a break, they're welcome to, take an intermission and come back. We'll still hold the space open until 1:35. So if there are questions or if there's something else you'd like to cover, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely.
So we'll keep the room open until 1:35.
Thank you very much. That's great, because I just kind of rushed through so much of what I wanted to share. Because really, what I wanted to
it's
talk about.
heartbreaking for you.
I was just warming up, Renee, you know how that goes. But I wanted to talk about a little bit about what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. I do, because I think that is critical to our being able to forgive. Oftentimes, that's where we get stuck. We don't necessarily get stuck in the circumstances or in the concepts of knowing that we need to do it. It's like our definition does not allow for us to do that. So when you think about forgiveness, what do you think forgiveness actually is? What is your working definition? What is your personal definition that you live by? What is it? And I think we've heard some of those echoed today already. I know we talked about taking responsibility and for how you feel. Does anyone have any
I
thoughts?
have one, Marquita, just from my own growth over the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's being very conscious and mindful and deliberate in my decision making to take my power back. to let go of any resentment or any hurt so that I, Renata, can live my life and continue my journey in peace. So I think, for me, it's just being very conscious, being very deliberate day by day, not saying I'm perfect, not saying, the hurt is fully gone, but acknowledging I'm no longer bound to it or bound by it. And, taking control of my life and saying, okay, this happened to me. I don't have to stay there. I don't have to be sort of, kind of smothered down by it. And being very conscious and recognizing that we all experience hurt. We all experience harm. There's a time that I might need forgiveness. There's a time I might need someone that, needs forgiveness from me, something I've done. But to be very conscious and deliberate in trying to put the resentment, to put the harm in its place so that I am not trapped by this feeling of hurt, that I can continue to go on, with my life.
Absolutely.
And I think
Thank you.
being very deliberate about it,
Being
just as
very
we're
deliberate.
deliberate about getting up, going to work, we're deliberate
Mhm.
about taking care of our families. We've got to have that same mindset, the same mindfulness and deliberate intent, conscious intent to say, okay, this happened. How can I find a level of peace so that I can continue to evolve?
Absolutely. Thank you. Andrea? Or is it Andrea?
Yeah, it's Andrea. Thank you.
Andrea? Mhm.
I mean, I deeply appreciate all of that's been said and what Professor Valerie said. And I think this echoes it a bit, but what it really includes for me quite often is a deep acceptance of my own humanity and a deep acceptance of somebody else's humanity.
Mm.
And really not tolerance, acceptance, just really accepting the imperfection of the human experience.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you. Acceptance is absolutely huge. It really is.
Ms.
And
Campbell,
so go ahead. Mhm.
may I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
Are we talking about faith here, or are we talking about forgiveness? Because these are way connected, since forgiveness we talk about is a process. And what is forgiveness to you might not be what is forgiveness to me in terms of how it affects me.
Mhm.
A child who lost his parents when he was 14 or 13 years old and growing up without a father, how do we talk to such individual that, hey, you know what? The reason why your dad is not here was because so and so he was also a child when he made the mistakes. And we ought to forgive that individual. And on the flip side, you saw this very victim or the perpetrator doing something great in life. Why? For some reason, your son or your daughter couldn't make it because he or she does not have a father or someone to support him. And but here we are, we're talking about forgiveness. So my question, just because of the time, are we talking about faith in terms of belief, or we're talking about forgiveness as it is?
I'm sorry. Are you saying faith or fate?
Belief.
Belief?
Yes. When you like church, like to believe in the faith that this is your destiny, nothing you can do about it, then you're gonna move on. And I'm sorry, yeah, it happens. You have to let it go. It's just your faith. It's just what you're destined to confront, or something like that. So is that what we're talking about here? Or are we talking about forgiveness as literally forgiveness? Because I'm not sure how we can say forgiveness without talking about our beliefs. Both look kind of go in tandem. So I just want clarity
Okay, that's a good question, actually, and I'm hoping I'm going to address what you're asking me. Okay, so when I talk about forgiveness, I'm talking about it. I guess I'm talking about it as a lifestyle. I don't necessarily. I think that there's a point in our lives where we all have. Yes, we are all born into certain circumstances. There's certain things that we encounter, but I think that even though those are the circumstances that we have inherited or we've come into or that we've arrived at for whatever reason, you still have an opportunity to make a choice. I think that you still have the opportunity to to chart your life, so to speak. You can take the situations that you're given and use those opportunities to move forward in your life. I don't think that those opportunities mean that that's the end of your road. I do believe that coming from some of those places, actually some of those places have what catapulted people into doing amazing things. So I think it's all about how you look at your life and what you think is possible. I think I started off talking about it's possible. It's possible. Having a good life is possible. Being as earlier today when in the presentation when she talked about you can take children or juveniles that have been in the system and they can still go to college. It's possible. It's possible. So that's what I think I'm saying. I'm saying it's not the end of the road, that there's a place to go. You still have opportunity and you get to make a choice. Because at the end of the day, forgiveness really is a choice that you make or an opportunity to reframe the situation and make it work to your advantage in the long run. Does that answer your question, or is that where we are?
Thank you. But I love to push back, but not today. Hopefully, I'll have the opportunity as well to talk to engage you down the road. Now,
absolutely, I would love to push. I would love to continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Judith.
Hi, yes. I put a question in the chat. I was wondering if if there's other webinars concerning. I know this one's for the youth, redesigning the youth. It's programs within the criminal justice system. But do you know others about adult criminal justice system? Because we know there's issues for the persons who are in that situation. So just wondering if you know something about that, or
I don't off the top. I have some colleagues that I can check with and I can see that do work. They do some work on that level, but I can check with and get that back to you. I can do that.
Yes, that'll be great.
Thank you.
How would that be possible? Through email or
FS team? Tell me how is that possible?
So what we do have, and we created a reflection board. So any questions that weren't answered, please, when we put the link back up for you, put your question on the reflection board. We'll get an answer, and we hope to have all of the questions that actually didn't get an answer provided back to everyone. We'll create a document with all of those questions and answers that we'll share.
Okay.
And if you look in the chat, you'll have the Jamboard link as well.
You'll also have the question and answer panel coming up for the next session, just for future references.
Okay. And then question regarding this webinar, would this be something that, for example, the youth will have a counselor to specifically have a person, observe or evaluate their certain case, because I guess each youth has a different case or different position which they're in, and how is that the forgiveness program that you're trying to implement or incorporate going to do with that? So is there going to be a counselor, or is it just going to be like a general like meeting in which all youth will be there and speak out about their issues, or a specific one-on-one? help or assistance.
Well, at this point, I'm in the early stages of developing of conceptualizing that concept, because as I do more work in this arena, as I have these conversations, it's become eminently clear that there's a need to have some kind of a process involved. And I do systems design periodically, depending on depending on the group that I'm dealing with. So I'll definitely take that under advisement at this point. Yeah.
And I'd like to just add something. I think, when you're conceptualizing or you're considering creating a new program, you also need to be mindful of the existing structure of, existing youth courts and how they're
Exactly.
structured. You've got to take into consideration, feedback from those who've sat on the bench and have worked with youth. You've got to get feedback from other community partners as you design this program Marquita's talking about. Right now, it's like any, thought that you have, like, okay, we really need this, but it translates into how do we do this?
How to, exactly. Exactly. How do we implement this? How do we integrate it? How do we connect it to what they already have? Because it definitely would not be a separate entity. It complements the work that people are already doing. And so how do I come alongside and how do I meet the needs of the people that are already in this process and help actually have it to be a help for them as well? And we connect into that process. You're right. It's a process for sure. Any more questions? You probably should take a break because it's 1:29, and then
I think the other group might be finished as well, Marquita. So I could bring everybody back if everybody wants it. If that's okay, Scott, you let me know. I'm not sure if you're on this one or not.
Is this their break time?
That would be okay.
They're welcome to take a break if they so choose.
I don't think it's 15 minutes though, Paradise. I think it's shorter than that.
Come back at 1:35.
It's more like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for your participation and thank you for having me here. I could go on forever and we could do this again. And there's so much more I would love to share with you about the concept of forgiveness, because I am definitely committed to it as part of my DNA, definitely, as I shared with you how that was incorporated into my life and it's part of my lifestyle. So I am definitely passionate about the concept, and I've seen it work firsthand. I've sat in places where I've witnessed it. I've sat in places where I literally have seen people literally gone from almost ashen to just lifting off of them. Excuse me. And we've done 3-day workshops. I'm losing my voice here. We've done 3-day workshops. And I've seen the transition, the transformation. And so I'm just so committed to helping with the process, because the how to, you're told to forgive, but we're rarely told how. I am the how. I am the one that comes along with you and help you with the how. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.
Renata, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here, Marquita.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
So
Professor
yes.
Valerie, are we able to talk during break or no?
Yeah, you can talk if you so choose, Nicole. I know that voice everywhere.
Marquita, was that your poem? Did Julie place a poem in the chat before we left? Was I mistaken? Or was that yours?
No.
History? I know you've shared poems before.
I
but,
have, yes.
One of the things that struck me, and Professor Valerie talked about, is that when you forgive, you're doing it for yourself. And the challenge for me is forgiving myself.
Yes, that's
So
huge.
that's one of the, and I think oftentimes when we learn to forgive ourselves, then we're able to forgive others as well.
Well, you know what's interesting? Some people can forgive others before they can forgive themselves. But it's
I'm
true.
one.
At the you're one of them. At the
Yeah.
core of it, forgiving yourself is critically important. It all kind of come back. It comes full circle and comes back around to forgiving yourself. It really does.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah. Because like they say, when you know better, you do better, right?
Yes.
And it's
You're
like,
right.
yeah, you have to give yourself the grace of like, okay, going forward. Now, if you keep repeating the same thing over and over, then you really need to have a conversation with yourself, you know. But yeah, we all make mistakes, and it's okay as long as we learn and grow. Like I say, you stand on your story as you move forward. It elevates you, and that brings you down.
Rachel asked in the chat, so when you say forgive yourself, in what content? Rachel, was that for me in the content? I'm hard on myself if I've hurt someone else. Even if I'm able to ask that person, it's painful for me to even think about the pain that I've caused others. So if my impact does not match my intent, that's where I have trouble reconciling with myself.
And so how do you handle that? What do you normally do?
Meditate, pray,
Okay.
cry,
Mhm.
call friends,
Mhm.
get it out, and then go on.
Do you talk to that person?
Generally, I've already talked to that person. So this is after I've spoken with the person, just me again, my internal self speaking of, why did you let yourself, become that angry? Why did you say that? Even if that person has already forgiven me. It's for me, I consider it my own trauma that I've caused another person, and it's hard for me to live it. But another times, it's often I may think that I may be putting more value on myself. I may think that I'm giving, that I've impacted them more than I have. So yeah.
Exactly. That's why I was asking, did you go back and have that conversation with them? Because sometimes you go back and they say what? I think the other day I got a text message